Okay, this is our first video being made of removing the back seat, the rear bench seat, and we're having an issue with the bench seat because one side seems to work, and we're going to have to remove the bench seat and try to figure out what the problem is. Okay, in order to remove the rear bench, first there's two bolts that are visible. We'll need to remove those, get those out. They're 10mm bolts, and as you can see here is one of them, and we're going to go ahead and remove these. We'll get one on the left side first, and then we'll get the other side and then see what we need to do next. I can get the bolt out. Okay, so I'll get this one out, and then I'll go ahead and remove the other one. There's the bolt. So I'll remove the other one, and then I'll come back. So now we've got the bench loose, as you can see, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle it out. Okay, just by removing those two bolts and wiggling, pushing, and pulling, managed to kind of wiggle the bench loose. And now I can see that there's some cables here. I don't know how well we can see in the camera, but see there's a cable. So there's electrical connection. And so along with the seat belts and some of the junk that's under here, I'm going to find the connection for the seat. And but here's the cable. So and I guess I need to try to remove that. And here is the connector. I'm quite the novice, but I love to do things myself and figure out the challenge. So I've got to figure out how to take that connector loose, or it looks like it's in a bracket. Looks like I can maybe slide that out. Oh, the bracket looks like it's loose. But if the bracket would hold still, I can probably just slide this bolt out. Of course, I'm trying to do this with one hand. It's not working too well. Let's see. Let me put down the light. Maybe you can still see. And, oh, wait a minute. This whole bracket came off. Okay, that's kind of nice. Now I can slide it out of the bracket, and I can disconnect it. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so now pull that apart. Looks like the contacts are pretty clean. I'm gonna slide this bracket back in place so that I don't lose it. Put it back on. There's a little notch there, if the camera can see it. And okay, so that's one. So now that one's loose. I'm gonna go around. Oh, Band-Aid. I'm gonna go around to the other side and do the same thing on the right hand side, and I'll be back. I disconnected the right hand side just like the other left hand side that I showed you on video, and because I didn't want to scratch anything, I had my wife help me pull the bench out. This is the bottom of it, and you can see the two plugs. Looks fairly clean. While I have it out, I'll probably wipe it down and clean it up a bit, the top and bottom. But this is the bench, and over here, let's see. So here is the bench removed, and you can see the tracks, and it's fairly clean. There's not a whole lot of mess. There's a cap over there, and I'm curious as to where that goes. It might not even belong under here, and I'll kind of look around and see, try to figure it out. But looks like there's some sort of sound dampening padding material here. So I'm going to go ahead and test this switch, or look at those gears. I'm going to hit the recline button and see what happens. I'm kind of expecting something to happen in here, and again, I'm a novice, so but this cable, I hear the motor, and so I'm expecting these gears to move, whether either forward or backwards. And there is absolutely no movement, and I'm looking over at the other gear and nothing is happening there either. So I'm gonna have to troubleshoot a little bit more. I'm gonna have to remove it, I think, and find the motor and look at the cables, see if the cables are connected. I will be back. I started looking a little bit further. I followed these cables. The first cables I followed back are right here. Hopefully you can see my hand in the video. And it came to the motor, so it looks like I don't have to remove the backrest. It looks like there's a plastic cover over the small motor, and I'm just gonna, it's not bolted down, and so I'm just gonna kind of see if I can't lift it or slide it up out of here one way or another. Let's see. Well, I don't want to force anything or break anything, so I'm going to say, oh, here, slide these down. Now I can now I can just kind of slide that right out. Okay. All right, so that's just a cover. It's just a cover that goes over the motor, so put that aside for now, and follow this cable a bit further. So where's this cable? This cable goes right here. All right, and then this side of the cable goes to the left-hand side of the bench. The motor, it appeared like it was working. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this gear track off of the sliding track by removing this bolt and this bolt. I'm going to take this off and clean up all this grease and re-grease it. I'm also going to disconnect this cable that feeds to the motor by removing the spring clip and pulling it off. So let me go ahead and do that. These bolts are surprisingly loose. They're not. They didn't take much torque at all to pull them off. Gosh, that one had virtually no friction before it came loose. And one thing I noticed is that the bolts are different. The bolt near the front of the track is a little bit shorter than the bolt in the back of the track. It's a little bit longer, so I'll need to remember that as when I go to put them back in. Oh yeah, so I'll clean that up. Clean it up really good, and then I'll degrease it. For now, let me get this spring clip off. No luck. Okay, rather than run the camera, this spring clip here is the one we have to remove to get this cable out. So I'm going to turn the camera off and work at this, try to get it out, and then once I get that loose and off, sliding down here, then I'll turn the camera back on and pull this cable out. Okay, here is the spring clip that I pulled loose. To me, that was a little bare. It was dug down in here, and I had to really kind of pry it, and I had to pry it so that the tongs or the tips of each of the spring clips was vertically up this way, and then I could easily squeeze it and push it off. So, but it took me a little because it was all buried up under here. So that was a little bit of a challenge. But now, with the spring clip out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this cable up and out. Kind of wiggle it, I guess. Get it out of there. Okay, there we go. Alright, all the grease down in there. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, but now that that's loose, now I am going to go, I'm going to take a break and from kneeling here on my knees in this car, and I'm going to go clean these tracks really well. I'm just going to degrease them, wipe them down, and I'll apply grease a little bit later. And I'll probably come back and clean this gear here as well. It's kind of crusty. So I will be back after I clean this. Now I'm gonna remove, just because it's easier to get this gear, the cable back in the gear. It's easier to get it back in place with this track removed. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to show you how to do it. You need to line. There are 2 holes in this track that line up with bolts, and I've already done the right-hand side so that I would be familiar with what all needs to be done. One of the things that I learned that I got frustrated with is I couldn't figure out how to line these holes up, and it's because the backrest has dropped, and so you need to pick that up, and then you can move the track back and forth, or you can line up the holes like there. So take this track off. Okay, there's one. Okay, so here's the track. It's removed, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to clean off. I'm going to take this bracket here. I'm going to take this bracket here off of the track, and then I'm going to degrease this track, and then I'm going to put some synthetic grease on it again to help it slide. As of right now, let's see how it slides. It's pretty, and it catches in the detent, but it's hard to pull, so it doesn't slide as smooth as I think it should. So I'm going to take this off, and I could tell right now already, because I did the other one first, I can tell that somebody's tampered, or somebody's been in here before. Because the bolts are different. I guess that doesn't mean somebody's been in here before, but to me it suggests that. Okay, so that's all it is with this one. Take this bolt out, and this unit comes off. This is where the cable, when it's engaged properly, the D end of the cable, the end of the cable is it's got a square notch, so it only fits one way. It fits into here, and I believe my issue was the cable was too short and it kept disengaging, kept pulling out. When it pulls out, it wouldn't run the gear. So I'm actually going to clean this up now. I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to go clean this up, and I'm going to clean up the gear, and I will be back. Okay, I've cleaned up the track, as well as the gear mechanism. So now I am going to cut this cable. First of all, let me pull out the, this is the drive cable that comes from the motor, and it goes to the gear mechanism. I need to pull this out. All the way out, and you can see it's got a lot of grease on it. I'm not gonna, it looks pretty good. I'm not gonna bother cleaning that up, but I am going to cut this cable in half. I'm going to cut it right in the center, the sheath, so that I can splice onto it. Now, in all honesty, I'm following some instructions from other experienced guys on one of the forums, benzworld.org, and so I'm following his directions. There are some things, though, that for the novice like myself that they left out, and you kind of got to figure it out. But one of the items was that you cut this cable, and then you have to cut it a little bit shorter. He said cut 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 inch off. So now I just made that cable a little bit shorter, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to splice it together with some 5/16 fuel tube and a couple hose clamps. I'm going to patch this just simply by pushing this through. I don't want to leave a gap in there. I'm going to push it all the way together. And see, that gives me length at the end of my cable. And I'm going to clamp this in place. Okay. All right, that's in there. So now I'm going to test it again. Let me turn the key on. Beautiful. Yep. Okay, so now I'm going to put this gear back on this track. I am curious as to why this gear bracket, the bracket on this gear has 2 holes, 1 and 2, yet only one was used. I would like to know why. And there's kind of evidence that there wasn't another one used, because you can tell from the paint how it's stripped away from tightening the bolt. Alright, that's snug. Okay, now I'm going to put this cable back in. I'm going to put the cable here in the gear before I put it in. It's something I learned yesterday. Yesterday I was trying to get it all back into place. And oh, wait a minute, hold on. I almost made a mistake. Where's my spring clip? Gotta have that. Alright, put that on. So now, twist it so that I get that cable in there. Well, it was in there. Well, I'm having a heck of a time getting that cable to seat inside the gear. I can't see, it's a little bit dark, so even with a little bit more light, I don't think that's gonna help a great deal. You know what I'm starting to think? Thinking I screwed up again. Okay, lesson number 2. Lesson number 2 is the cable is a bit too long now. Of course, that's an easy fix. That's why we have 2.5 inches of the fuel hose. So I think what I'm going to have to do here is I think it's too long. So I'm getting it engaged, but then I'm not able to push it in any further. So what I'm going to have to do is I am going to pull the sheet. I'm going to loosen one of these edges and pull the sheath out a little. Okay. I'm going to pull this out just a little so that we have less showing. And this may be a trial and error thing, but I'm going to try that right there. We have less. I'm going to tighten it back up. Maybe I should tighten it up after the fact, but it's not a whole lot of trouble, so I'll go ahead and tighten it. All right. Oh, that was too much, but this is about, I don't know, what's that look like? Maybe 1/2 inch. This cable here, I kept playing with the sheath so that this cable was approximately 1/2 inch sticking out. So I'm going to test it again, make sure. Okay, it's working, if you can see that. So now I'm going to put it back in, get it lined up, make sure that I have my spring clip on, because those things give me more problems than anything. Okay, it's in there, it's seated. Let me test it. Now if you can watch this gear right here, we'll test it. Beautiful. It's working both ways. Waverly, hit that switch over there. That one. Yep. No, that one. Yes. Down. Okay, stop. Okay. All right. So now that that's in, and now that it's in and working, I am going to get the spring clamp back in place to hold it there. And as I mentioned before, these spring clamps always give me grief. I can never seem to get them. So I'm going to turn the camera off until I get this, and then I'll come back. Okay, so now, yes, it took me 10 minutes, no kidding, just to get that one spring clamp on there. But as you can see, with the key ignition on, it's working nicely. So let me turn the key off. Turn the key off, and now I'm going to reinstall this track. First place I'm going to do is line up the top and the bottom track so that these two holes line up. This hole as well as this one down here. Make sure they're lined up nice and straight. That way it'll be easier to get that screw in there. Okay, so now I need a little light here to see what's going on. Little trick, I've got to lift this seat up. Okay, that's pretty much in line as best my eye can tell. So Gonna get that into place. I'm gonna hold the track with one hand, so hopefully it won't move much on me. Looks like it's going into place. It's getting dark here in Texas, so this light that I have here is about the only thing that I have left. Hope it's good enough for the video. Alright, I think it's going into place. It feels like it is. It's going in. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure this other hole here lines up, and let's see, let me turn the camera a little bit. This hole here, got to make sure it's lined up as well, and it looks pretty good already because the other one's already lined up, so this one should be straightforward. Light keeps twisting on me. Alright, so let's see. I think it's engaging. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to snug this up. I'm going to snug this one back here up. Alright, track's back in place. This tape here, while it's not the best, I'm going to leave it. It doesn't serve anything other than padding the bottom of the seat. So now, I've got to tie this bracket back on. In order to do that, where's the other gear mechanism? Here we go. I'm going to put this back in place. And it lines up with two holes, one here and one back here. So line it up, and the thing is, now I've got to get it under this plate. So once again, you've got to lift the seat up, line the holes as best you can, and engage the gear. So I think, okay, that hole's lined up. I'm going to go ahead and screw that one in. And you'll notice, if you remember from when we took it apart, there's two different length bolts. And you need the shorter one up front because it's only going through this plate and into the track. Whereas the back, you have to go through this extra plate that's mounted to the backrest. So that's why it's longer. So let's go ahead and put the shorter one in. See if we can get it started by hand. I don't want to strip anything. It feels like it's going in cockeyed, so well, it's pretty straight in there. Okay, no, that feels pretty good. Oh yeah, it's going right in. So let me just tighten that one down. There we go. Alright. Okay, that's loose. Now, the trick that I learned for this one, because I could not figure it out. This hole here on this bracket that comes from the backrest, you can see how it goes up here. There's two slotted holes here. This one apparently may be used on a different vehicle. I'm not sure why it's there, but this one does not line up. And the trick it took me a while to, well, it might on this one. Let me rephrase that. On the other side, it would not line up, and I had to pull a little trick to get it to line up. What I did was I had to run this up, and I had to pull the seat down to get it all lined up. But actually, this one appears as it's lining up pretty nicely. I may have to pull it a little backwards. So let me see. Okay, I'm going to turn the gear. I'm going to turn the key on and run this gear up a little so that I can line this hole up. I don't want to run it up a lot, so let's see if that was enough. Oh, great. Now I'm gonna fish the screw out of here. Got my both fingers on it. Here we go. Okay, so it appears that if I kind of pull up on that, there, get it lined up. There we go. Nice. Okay, so you may have to push and pull the seat, especially when you have both tracks. When you have both of these tracks undone, this seat becomes, one of the sides gets loose, and you're going to have to pull and push, and you're going to have to line this gear up so that you can get this one hole in place. Apparently on the second one, it's much easier. Okay, that's snug. All right, I'm going to test it again, make sure it's still working properly, and it is. I'm going to grease up the gear. I know there's probably better grease to use, but I'm just going to use a little Moly fortified grease on this track. I'm going to try it again. Just try the button. Looks pretty smooth. Looks like it's operating just right. And I am going to turn the camera off just for a minute, and I'm going to clean up around the car, and then I'll be back to finish up the project. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention is when you are lining up both sides, or when you put the gear back on the track, you want to make sure that the left gear matches the right gear over there. So what I just did is I ran it all the way forward so that the gear was in the front two teeth, and so I made sure both sides were lined up, and let's see how it works. Seems to be operating beautifully. No issues, both sides are running smoothly. You want to make sure that this track is in the most forward position, because on the very end of the track, let's see if I can turn this camera. On the very end of the track, remember, we have the two bolts that hold the cushion onto the track, and you've got to be able to get this nut. You have to be able to get this nut, get your finger up under this track to hold the nut while you screw in the bolt. So I'm going to make sure that the seat is all the way forward. Let's push it forward. Okay. So the seat's all the way forward. Let's turn this again. The seat is all the way forward. Now you can see there's plenty of room here between the carpet padding and the front of this. So now I'll easily, nothing's easy for me, but I should be able to put this bolt up in here while I screw on the cushion. So the next thing for me to do after I clean up the rest of these tools and make sure there's no towels and dirt under the seat, clean up the seat really well, I'm gonna ask my wife to help me get the cushion back in the car, and I'll attach it down. I'll be back. I had my wife help me put the bench seat back in place. I am going to hook up the cables. This is the heater. Of course, I didn't know what it was when I unplugged the bench, but now I know this is a heater. So we are gonna hook this back up into the clips that we pulled it from on the back of the car, and then we'll bolt the bench down, and the job should be complete and successful. I had to put the bench seat in and kind of pull and shove and get it kind of back into position, and make sure that this alignment hole right here is lined back up. And this is the very first bolt that I removed. So, and with the seat, you really can't do this with the seat in the upright position, but with the seat fully reclined, it's easy to get your hand in there to hold the nut on the back side. Oh yeah, and then just twist this in. Oh, much better. Simple. So that took no time at all. Get nice and snug. Okay, we are finished. So now I have the seat ready, and for final testing, let's see, here's the switch. Looks like it's operating beautifully. I owe most of the thanks to friends, people that I met at benzworld.org. They're the guys that have given me direction how to do this, so thank you, everybody.